Okay, we are going to get started here. Yeah. Oh dear, today's going to be off to a rough start already. No streamer bots will connect. Can't get chat to work properly. Oh, let's hope it's not just me being unlucky this morning. Nope, definitely won't connect. So at first I thought it was restream, like disconnecting the service or something. But then I went to open StreamerBot and it won't connect any auth tokens. So that's not working. So you know what? Sometimes technology just does not work. It's fine. So, good morning, online. Today, Danny, thank you very much for the resub. So I just realized something. We all know there are 12 months in a year, right? But honestly, the first 10 months do all the heavy lifting. January through October is like, let's get stuff done. Year's resolutions, spring cleanings, summer applications, and November, December roll in like, nah, we're good. Let's just eat, sit around and pretend we're not procrastinating on all the goals we set in January. 10 months of effort, 2 months of food covered. That is a very good way of looking at it. Nice. Thank you, Kenny. Okay, no, Loki, we're not starting that. We're not starting as we. No, no. You sit down. Be a good boy today. No jumping up. Okay. Okay. So, today. Yesterday we got the cards showing, so we can go between the sprints, get the cards, and then last night I got drag and drop working. So now you can arrange the sprints. And it generally works okay. The challenge is that, oh, apparently I'm not logged in. That's awesome. The challenge is, they probably aren't. Yeah. That it now it now made me realize there's a gap in the process. There's a workflow problem. I did this off stream because I just wanted to tinker with it. I didn't want to get too bogged down on the refinement of things. There's no ordering, there's nothing like that, nothing advanced at this point, so that's okay. But it made me realize that there's a hole, a gaping hole that I would not have seen even if I'd have been planning, because I was not thinking about this challenge. So I have my backlog, and my backlog provides me the ability to see the tasks that we've got laid out, and it allows me to set the sprint if I want to, or set a status. I introduced ready for development yesterday to test something. Ready for development is just another status. It's fine. The way the statuses work right now, they're strings, so it just gets added in. Well, sit down, log. I know, bud. Loki's trying to come and sit on my lap. But it's not happening. So the problem comes from the visibility of these things now, right? So essentially backlog isn't a status, is what I'm thinking. Backlog is just this when a sprint's not assigned. So this is all work not assigned to a sprint. And then you have the sprint visibility. Right. So I've got to figure out that workflow. So essentially, what that is everything is ready for development. So we go to the start tasks. Yeah. So let's start from tasks. Sorry, Ken, I didn't see the rest of your message earlier on, by the way. So the reason I was asking the question, if you're still there, the reason I was asking the question about when you're attaching the sub was if you are selecting, you're just using a string to do the event sub. So there's no way of looking it up and saying, hey, do I have permission for this? It's kind of, if you selected, yeah, let me think about it, and I want to ask some more questions. For me, it's the visualization thing. I've got to just try and figure out who owns what and who knows about what for my own purpose. So I'll ask a few more questions afterwards if that's okay. I like the breakup though. The architecture is nice. Just gonna give you a bit of a trip up. So yeah, I'll ping after the stream. So let's go do this. Let's go. So let's start from tasks. Oh, by the way, I need to make sure. I keep forgetting to do this. All right, I don't think about his stream, but if you get a chance, Cyforce One is developing an app called Momentous, and the app is basically for goal tracking and setting and tasks. Like it's very related, right? It's he's developing an app, and he's set himself a goal of releasing it in now 8 days' time. So very worth checking out. His stream is super chill, super nice guy, super supportive. And yeah, so definitely check him out. So I need to remember to shout him out more because it's it's related. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the status of all these. Oh no, we need to stop running anyway. We need to stop running anyway. Can't do it that way because we have a design problem. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I want to solve this right a second. Thank you, online. I want to get over this hump with Liquid Sky, and then I want to spend some time on developers.stream as well. But I need to get this to a good place before I can even break away. There's a problem with this. Starts there. IU2 is better English, right? Yeah, generally. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, you two. Um, you could say hi to the both of you, but yeah, I get it. These headphones have to come out. They're hurting my ears. I like the fact that it dulls the sound a little bit, so my voice doesn't sound as annoying to me. But yeah, okay. Hey, daughter. Good morning. Yeah, I use IDAR specifications, and as for aggregates, again, I think what my if you look at some of the other designs, specifically one of the ones, the DDD one you sent the other day, what I call this model here looks almost identical to what they put aggregate root on, right? So I don't feel these are aggregates in the form of an aggregate. So I'm not whacking that on yet, but that did actually the stuff you shared the other day. Yeah, it knows how to create itself. The stuff you shared the other day, it gave me an idea on how to tackle the problem I had the other day of validation. So that's a good thing. So I can test those validators and stuff, and I'll review how they did that and see what I like and don't. Yeah. So we'll see. Okay. So that's problem number one. It's hard coded. So even if I do ready for development as a default, I've still got the problem, right? I'm hard coding that thing. This should break the tests. Uh, might not do actually. Oh, it did. Wow. Task evaluated backlog status. No task event. Nice. Yeah. Adding a task. Oh, this is getting out of hand. That I've got to tackle. Um, just field expected status. Let me just do this. So specifications. So this one, these are more complicated. These are generally more complicated ones. These aren't specifically complicated. So this is a specification, and it's really just a setting of the predicate or any includes, etc., all inside of here. So yeah, it is essentially, hey, I want this thing. You can transform it in here. You can return something that isn't this thing. You can say it's a specification of sprint, but it returns. You can say, but it returns, sprint modified model, something like that, right? You could say it returns something else, and then you can set the transform in here, and then you give that to repository in tasks, update tasks. So you say, okay, go and get me the entity by identifier spec. That's pretty obvious, right? That's just this is a standard pattern, so therefore that can just be by the identifier. And then those other ones, those more complicated ones, they're not really difficult, right? These are used here. So first to default. there's a bunch of DB code in there. Could that be moved to the specification inside the repository? There's a bunch of DB code in there. Bunch of DB code in where? Oh, I query do some logic. You could. I mean, the reason I like this, purely from a um, generally what determines the specification for me is if I need to right now if I need to it's the where of the query or it's the include. So in these cases, these don't do tracking, so these pull back the data. That means I don't have to care about that when I'm being explicit here just to help me. Yeah, the specification is how to pass the lambda that becomes the query parameters. So you can do in here, you can do query dot a split query. So again, if it does multiple, it'll actually split them out. You can do the include, you can do the paging if you want to. So you can wrap around this behavior. And yeah, it kind of neatens it up there. Yeah, and the repository layer is a wrapper. So the repository, from my perspective, that's it, right? I say, okay, if I ask for an iRepository, right now, it's going to give me one of these. Right? It's going to give me an instance of this, which is inherited from this, which is inherited from his stuff, right? And all that's just so I can pass in a specific DB context, and that's it. That means that in the application code, I can just inject. Oh, I want to get access to tasks. Yeah. So I've not written very much to do with repository. That's all Pardalis. And realistically, all it is a wrapper around DB set. So again, like people complain, like, oh, repository, you've got DB context. It's just an abstraction that makes it a little easier to use and test. Yeah, so there's very little you define. Now, repository for me here, this is my shared one, but even that, it's just because it pulls in those two things, repository base, which is an iRepository base, and iRepository, which is my definition anyway. Actually, I don't need that, but oh yeah, I do for the iRepository. But yeah, so I can get to interfaces. But yeah, ultimately all I'm doing is trapping that, and I don't even believe I need that. I think I've used that somewhere. That's why that's there. But yeah, so for every module, I basically define its repositories, and there we go. That's it, done. Now you can only use one of these per because you know. So because of the way that the data is laid out, it actually works perfectly fine for me. It fits nice and neat. And these I have the most common one I have is this entity by identifier spec, right? So this is everything that's entity. I can just say, hey, give me that, and I don't need to worry about any specific spec. Your aggregate layer is the task, and each aggregate is its own module. Uh, Not specifically. There are like planning has a few concepts. So again, we've talked about this, right? Tasks is really execution because um, sprint and task live inside of here, right? So this module is things related to that. Task can exist without a sprint. A sprint can't. A sprint has no purpose without tasks, right? So that they aren't related. They are related slightly. If you delete a sprint, you should delete all its tasks. That's debatable because a sprint is just an organization of tasks. A sprint is not an owner of tasks. It's a wrapper. If you delete a planning item, you should delete all its tasks. So planning is a separate concept, though, right? Tasks are spawned from requirements, or can be spawned from requirements. There's no concept of force sprints or something. There's no concept of force sprints. A sprint is just a representation of a time, right? A time frame, and a collection of assigned tasks to that sprint, which is kind of what I'm getting to now. But no, if you delete a sprint, you shouldn't delete the tasks in it. Those tasks are still necessary. They're just not in that time frame. My coffee tastes funny today. Oh, I could teach you. I'm just trying to get things straight out. Yeah, no worries. It's its own module. Yeah. Just to try and make sure I keep away from the microservice word, right? These aren't microservices. These can get bigger and will get bigger. They will have behavior. And after having some discussions in the last couple of days, I firmly believe a lot more behavior is coming soon, right? But yeah, there's yeah. So again, tasks is not a good module name because tasks contain task and they contain sprints. So if this is like support and this is planning/preparation, right? This is the execution component of the system. This is the, go off and execute plans. This component, tenant management, is likely to go away and move to be owned by control tower because tenants are sprints. Because it's the execution of the work is not necessarily tied to that, right? So if there's a Kanban board, it would also be in this component, right? If there's the sprint is a concept, but certain teams don't benefit from sprint; they benefit from more Kanban. Well, I don't know if it does matter, um, but I should remember to do it. Findle's also been dropping his stream announcements in there, and which is cool. Catch some of the Findle stream yesterday. It was good. Although he was doing Blazers, so it was right over my head. I said hello and then had to step away. And yeah. Surprising how much of the code I don't understand, even though I'm here every day. It's got. I kind of talked about this yesterday. It's got to be hard to comprehend. It's why I always say, like, if you want to talk about the code, if you want to ask questions, feel free. I'm like, you know, um, there's a lot to take in, right? So it's when I start to explain it and I start to dig into it, you start to see you start to see how difficult it like. There's a lot of stuff I've done that I don't realize because it just seems, yeah, I can do that in 10 minutes. Boring guy, hello. As I mentioned, I was summoned. I wasn't criticizing it. How you doing? Um, okay. So today we are going to try and so basically what's going to happen is this backlog. The moment I move something to a sprint, an item should not appear in here, right? Because it's in a sprint. We can then go to a sprint and see. So we're going to get rid of backlog as a status because backlog is essentially anything that's not assigned to a sprint. Once it's in a sprint, it disappears from here because it's in a sprint. Maybe later we'll include filters so we can show the sprints. Maybe we'll talk about that. But from a workflow perspective, that's actually it's really difficult to juggle this and use this properly. It's tradition to scrutinize Blazor. Can't just give them a free pass because they're Microsoft, right? So what I've done there is I've changed too much at once. I've changed the tests. I've changed the task. So we get that. Update default status to ready for development. Backlog is a concept of the client now, not a concept of the system as a whole, which makes sense. And it wasn't until I started moving these things around that I saw this gap yesterday. And again, I'm willing to tinker with this. I'm willing to change this because I think it's worth figuring out. Um, um, board should be able to group by swim lane and drag and drop should update. Update status to the relevant type when dropped. Let's move that. So again, we got the drag and drop working. Yeah, Delta, if you have it, if you want, you know, is there something specific you're trying to learn about? Is there something specific you want to see in the code? Just let me know. So the default there is work item. So let's start full stack up. Let's go over here. So let's start from tasks, where status equals backlog. And then trying to figure out how to reduce our dependencies at work, but not sure what the solution to that problem is. Could be just the aggregate root concept. Gotcha. Set status equal to ready for development. Did that do that? There you are. We did it. We don't have the concept of modules. I mean, so okay, I don't want to. I'm not trying to blow my own horn here. But one of the things that, as I started to build this and I started to think about this in this way, it eased the burden of a lot of problems I've had in the past, right? Working with monoliths, working with trying to build more microservices designs, trying to use GraphQL. And what it allowed me to consider is the fact that when you separate out associated data as just a thing this thing needs to know about but doesn't need to know about it now, the system gets way easier to just manage. And so those modules allow me to say, I'm saving this data. And then the reaction to that data, the things that occur after that, they have the data to work with. So when I add a planning item, it has an associated user, it has an associated project. Those concepts don't exist inside of planning. So I don't need to do anything in planning to capture that data. It's the truth as this sees it, right? Now, if that project was deleted, right, that's a challenge here, right? But it doesn't mean that I can't later on say, okay, well, if there's a reaction to that sort of thing, if we delete a project, this component needs to know a project was deleted and reset. There's behavior that I can add in there that isn't going to hurt me because I can just say, oh, this GUID for this project got removed. I need to do something in planning if this happens because there's a need, there's a reaction. Yeah, because everything is a task. It would be easy to bundle on that concept. But planning item having its associations, tasks having its associations. So task can be attached to a requirement, right? Well, a requirement lives in planning, but all it is an ID. So later on, if I delete a requirement and I want to delete tasks, I can still do that because I can just say, hey, tasks, by the way, a requirement was deleted. I can actually make the system react to that. And if I want to delete the tasks associated with the requirement, I can make this consume that event to say, oh, by the way, a requirement was deleted. And this can do what it needs to do, whether it be archive or whatever. But the behavior and the knowledge of that exists in this component and only this component, how it reacts to that. If it doesn't, if it wants to keep the data, we don't need to do anything, but we can do those things. Ticketing as a task, planning as a task, attachments are on a task, notifications are from a task. Yeah. Attachments are actually one of the nicest things, right? Because attachments is now built as a system where anything in the system can have an attachment. It just needs an attachment ID. So to get a task to have an attachment is literally build the screen to include the attachment component, which uploads and saves an attachment and returns an ID, and then to store that attachment against the task. So it's not difficult to attach. It's not difficult to include attachments on tasks. It's not difficult to include. I've been contemplating comments as its own component or discussion as its own component. And the reason being similar, right? Everything can have a comment. You could attach the idea of a comment to anything and it's its own system. You could actually use Elasticsearch out the box or Document DB for comments. So how does planning reference tasks just by ID? Planning doesn't actually have a reference to tasks. It has no idea about tasks. Tasks know about requirements. Planning has no idea what's attached to it. Yeah. So I could build a component that is just comments, and then instead of having planning store comments, I can just store a comment and a comment ID. And I do the same with attachments, right? A list of attachment IDs is stored in planning, right? If I delete the comment, or if I want to attach the same comment to multiple things, I want to say, okay, this comment exists on the planning item. I want it to copy to the requirement, and I want it to copy to any task created off it. So it's automatically a required thing. Planning items don't create tasks. Tasks are created and a requirement is attached. It can be attached. It doesn't have to be attached. So you can create a task independently of planning. So again, if you wanted to just do work, if you wanted to track some work, and I was talking about this with Mojo last night, essentially unplanned work, tech debt stuff, things like that, you wanted to tackle that, and you wanted to say, hey, we want to do this, you could actually show, oh, this sprint is made up of 10% unplanned work and 90% planned work because those tasks come from requirements. So there's no hard link between these things. They're all soft links. The task component doesn't need to know about planning component. Component doesn't need to know about tasks. If I rearrange these things, if I combine these things, it doesn't matter. And that's kind of why I like this architecture so far, because it just fits and things start to make sense when you start to realize that you don't have to have, like, for planning to save, it doesn't need to validate anything. It just needs to save the data, right? So it means that my speed of save is pretty quick, which means I get the ID back and the client reacts quickly. Attachment ID. Yeah, so if you look at if you want to see the data. So the planning items tables have associated projects, associated tickets. Again, because there's one to many. Tickets is obviously an old concept right this second. But we have associated projects and attachments. Technically, that should be associated attachments, I suppose. But basically, this is, oh, this attachment links to this planning item ID. So when I attach it, when I upload the attachment, I first you're drawing attachments workflow. So client I don't know how to draw. There's a name for the. I don't know how to draw them properly, but essentially, I want to draw a time sequence diagram, but I don't know how to do them properly, and I can't remember the name right this second. So the client goes and stores save attachment. This returns its identifier of the attachment, right? So it said, yep, I've uploaded that to Azure. I'm saved, right? I'm good. And then, and this is why a time diagram would have helped here. This says update associate attachment ID with planning item, right? Flow diagram, I think, but can recommend just drawing it out loosely to get it out. Yeah. So we first save the attachment. The attachment stores it. Once that returns the ID, we know we've got the attachment because that's not failed. So now we can say, okay, now tell the planning item you have that attachment. So when this publishes out the integration event. It says, hey, I've got this attachment, by the way. The moment this is saved, this publishes an integration event, say, oh, by the way, this attachment, here's its name and here's its URL. Now, when the view consumes them, this stores, those get stored together and are normalized or denormalized, normalized, yeah, on the view database, so we can see it. But having this isolation of the data does give me greater control, and it's cleaner because everything's just saving it. The client does say, oh, I've got it has a very small piece. Yeah, it does have a behavior because, again, you would be able to say, okay, if you want to attach something, save the attachment first. It's the entire workflow. And then you can use that attachment ID on whatever you want, as long as yeah. So, yeah. That work could be done in some layer outside that if you want. It could, but for right now, I don't see any harm in having the client having some idea of what's going on. I think is just necessary. You could, and this is right, you could create an API that is literally the one that calls these two. Right? So you could create one API that says upload attachment, and that attachment is upload attachment to planning item as an API endpoint. And then that API makes those two calls independently and joins it. You could do that. I think it'd be overcomplication for something that is simple as I know this client is not going. I'm not opening this API to the world, right? It's reasonable to say, okay, well, I can make those two calls, and from this client, by the way, because of the API gateway, it all looks like one API. It's not like I know which API I'm calling. So all this is abstracted. If I join these two things together later on, be fine. Yeah, the problem isn't one, and that's what I'm saying. Is like once I got rid of the idea that I needed to know about tasks or I needed to know about tenants or I needed to know about attachments inside of planning as a concept, and I just needed to know their loose links, things got a lot easier. And again, if you look at most of the handlers, right? Most of the handlers look simple. I mean, that's it. That's a complicated one. An ad, right? There's nothing special to them. They're doing the right thing. Um, the planning, right? Planning application, planning items, update planning item. A more complicated version, but still not different, right? It's like go get the planning item. If it's null, return not found. If there's no changes, return success. We're good. If there are changes, we go into the service because this has more behavior to it, right? But no changes is in here. That's unit tested. But this is doing one thing. So the single responsibility of this system is a little easier to juggle. And I could actually move this to a validator if I wanted to, and have that just be its validation and really focus on the single responsibility. So I mean, if we're being technical, it does two things. It checks to see if things have changed and it calls the update, but that update isn't its responsibility either. So is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. There's no such thing as perfect, right? But it does its job, and I think it's doing it pretty well right this second. And I feel it makes sense, which is one of my big criteria, right? It I can change it, I can build it, I can adapt it, and that's key to me. Like the fact I'm about to rip out some behavior that I've been working for days on, and it doesn't phase me is telling to me. Okay, so the sprint, the backlog board, right? This is at task table. This is driven so far off of the entities. What we actually need is this to be all items that do not have a sprint attached to them, right? So, and again, to that point, there's logic in here. There's behavior in the application. There's behavior in the client. It takes a lot of work to move everything to server side and make the client really dumb. And I don't think it's not unrealistic, especially in a controlled environment. If I had an API, if these were exposed as public APIs and you could build whatever you want on top of it, that's when you have to consider. And that's why I also dislike when you have a private API that someone says, "Oh, let's just give the customer access to it." Yeah. Like, no. If you want a customer API, it's a separate API that does separate things and behaves separately because it's built for different things. And again, oftentimes we build an API for the UI. This you could argue in some cases is built for that UI. And don't forget, all this is, I mean, I put write there, but these are only ever write operations. They're never query operations in this design. The only query comes out of here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the task store and we're going to go to the task query and we're going to go to with computed. So we have these methods: backlog tasks, ready for development, in progress tasks, completed tasks. We're now going to do unassigned tasks, and computed is not quite unassigned, unsprintified. Yeah. Return entities Dot filter f goes to f dot associated dot sprint dot. So we're going to have unassigned tasks. So now in our table here, that's that. There we go. So now, no. Tasks, value tasks, that's the property. That's that. That should work. These shouldn't be there because they're assigned to a sprint, right? They should disappear. Everything that's in a sprint should disappear. Unassigned task. Oh, please make that work. Debugger. Entities. Okay. Hold on. I've got an idea. Ta-da! All of them are null because I haven't loaded the sprint. And this is where I'm starting to get. And now after work, I'm like, oh, thanks for stopping by. Sorry. Yeah, if you have any more questions, if you want to see the diagrams offline, just ping and I'll share anything I can do to help. So the problem here is the fetch all here doesn't load the sprint, right? So we have the concept of a sprint. Associated sprint, right? But we don't pull it. Task has sprint. So the way we get that, yeah, sprint is associated sprint. I don't know why I did it that way, but I did it that way, so it's fine. So we need sprint, associated sprint. Yeah. So now this will change this behavior. There you go. So now only cards that are unassigned to sprints. So if we change this to a sprint, it should disappear. Yeah, we've got a challenge there. Right. So next set of work. And verifying projects. View consume status on task. Oh, no, you didn't change, did you? I'm still not sure why that flash happens. That is actually driving me crazy because on the other screen there's no flash whatsoever, and for some reason I've got an update problem on this one. This is because when I update status, task detail, load detail for store.update this because we change everything about it every single time. Because it's the form. Yeah, it's the live form. That's fine. So we call update, get the user, we patch that. we update the task. Yeah, I probably don't want to do that. I probably want to do it this way. Let existing equal store. This is find f goes t goes to t.id equals task.id, and then if not existing, return. Try a second. This is starting to get a little bit messy than I want to do. So this convert to name function, apply, update to store. Oh, are you kidding me? We're going to do that in line? Oh, I suppose it. Oh, okay. Okay. Let to update equal task dot existing does that work? Let's see. I don't think that works the way I think it might, but we'll see. Off the rails gaming. Being a Jury Killer. Hello, how you doing? I don't know about Jury Killer, but I'm tackling some of the things I see wrong in Jira on a day-to-day basis. No, because it adds task in there. That's the problem. Okay, yeah, that's all that does. Adds task. So this is Liquid Sky, as it's termed, right this second. The purpose of this project is to kind of tackle some of the deficiencies I feel I see in Jira from a workflow perspective. So the focus of this is very much starting at planning, and planning is essentially what we call stories. Trying to figure out the requirements, but from a product team perspective, outlining the whys and whatnot, and then here's what we expect. But a single expectation, a single requirement can yield many actual development tasks. Once you start breaking things down, oh, we need to touch this service, we need to break this up, we need to do this. And the problem is that when we join the two together as a requirement, one of them has to give. Either we don't write two technical stories and we miss technical requirements because we're trying to fit them in the story, and then it's all about assumption, or we have too much technical requirement and the story is hard to understand for anyone who's non-technical. So what I'm trying to do is bridge the gap by saying, okay, well, the planning aspect of the system is a thing. But once you go beyond this, once you've got the requirements and you're ready to plan, the actual planning, the tasking is a separate component of the system and is done by developers or development teams or QA or DevOps, etc. And they are driving these off of those requirements. So this is the planning item it's associated with, and here's the requirement that yielded this task, right? So you can join back up the why with what you're actually doing and line those two things up. And I feel that works. So now we're getting to the sprint concepts. where you can see, ready for development, in progress, basic, very basic sprints, but you can drag and drop the tasks around, etc. So yeah, it's coming along. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out, this screen is the backlog. This if a thing is associated with a sprint, it should not exist in here. It should be filtered out of here because it now is in a sprint. So backlog work is work that is unassigned. So yeah. The project is closed source, but I do a lot of the development on the stream. So if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask. And yeah, I'm open to SQL Server. So the backend system looks something like that. So this is the Angular client. With the API gateway, we have SQL Server backing most of the things. Me, right this second. I'm starting to get used to the we thing. But we have, so we've got MongoDB backs changes and notifications components. But other than that, mainly SQL. GraphQL API for the query side of things. And right now it is broken into many databases. So many SQL databases, Redis cache, and then MongoDB for changes and pipeline stuff. So, but it's a distributed system using Kafka and mass transit with RabbitMQ. And yeah, it's a bit of a technology playground at the same time as being, a work in progress application. I think no matter what I want to do, no matter what I want, no matter what I feel here, I really do need to address this weird loading issue in this screen. So when I click on that, we get a flash. We shouldn't get a flash. It should just load. When we assign a sprint, create update endpoint should disappear. We need to close this as well now. No, we can't do that. We can't do that, can we? If we close that, then if you were going to make any other changes to it, yeah, no, that's fine. That's going to stay there. That's a usability thing for later. We need to talk about that. So now we should be able to go over here. I can't remember which ones I've done and which ones I've not. This is getting bad. View consume status on task. Okay. So I think that's working better. That's much smoother from a workflow perspective. It makes sense. Ready for development, in progress, complete. Backlog is not a concept anymore, so we can remove backlog as a status. And I suppose this is where that lunacy of having these as hard-coded strings for now is actually paying off, because I don't have to break anything to change this around, right? Ooh, what are you doing? What did I just change? Console. Cannot read property undefined of value. How did changing the status do that? I've still got backlog somewhere in there, haven't I? boards. So the sprint board, the way the sprint board works is it has the that's why 0, 1, 2 hard-coded indexes just to continue the difficulty. There you go. It has the list and then the method that it's going to call to get that data, right? So that on the store. So when we load the screen, we just need to loop through those, and we only have to put this out once, and then each task is attached with a drag start and end, and each task knows of its status anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference. When we drag it and drop it, we just set the status of that task using the same code we use for the other screen. So there's no difference to the back end in how that works. So if you are new to the stream in general, and you're interested in knowing about the technology, the coding, the whys, the whats, it is perfectly fine to ask questions. It is perfectly fine to discuss the software. I'm open to criticism as long as it's constructive, and it moves everybody forward. It's terrible, I don't like it, is not really constructive, so that would be ignored. But you know, I'm trying to build this because I feel that it solves a problem. And I do hope that one day I can make this an actual product. And the further along I get with it, the more I really do hope that. The goal is to try and make it so developers can get to the work they need without having to deal with all the management stuff of Jira and other products, right? So that separating the planning out, all this stuff, the tracking, the accountability, there's a lot of stuff planned for reporting. This review date concept is a whole planning thing. Which projects they think is assigned to, categorization, all those sorts of things. They belong in this side of things, but they don't affect the work you're doing. As a developer, the only time you care about this stuff is when you're asked to task it out and figure out what you actually need to do. So there is another thing that I want to look at in the next couple of days. I've been starting to add some things on the end here. The idea that developer visibility of planning. So, as a development team, when a planning item is ready for review, it would be good to it would be helpful to highlight this fact to the development team so they are able to prioritize planning of the tasks. So yes, product management can schedule a meeting, right? They can say, no, not 2020. They can say, let's meet next week and plan this thing out. Let's meet and do this thing. But I'm thinking that when this goes to ready for planning, that the developers see something to say this item is ready. And again, trying to separate the two out. So this is called task now, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's called task in the end. Again, it's kind of execution, workflow stuff. It's the stuff that gets done to implement the ideas that are in the planning system. But yeah, those planning items aren't going to appear here, but something to say, oh, by the way, there are 3 pending planning items that do need some review. And maybe it's a perspective from the developers. Here's the requirements that we have, whatever. So I've been trying to think about future needs here. And once it goes to ready for planning, I think the developer should get visibility of it before any meetings are set, right? So maybe the developers get a note that says, hey, this planning item is now ready for planning and it's got a review date of next Tuesday. So you probably should go and look at it, right? Because I don't even want to think about how many times I've asked developers to go off and look at stuff before we plan it, and then it's all ad hoc stuff done in the meeting, and it's just, you can't ask effective questions if you're not prepared going into the meeting. And job specs now actually do put a lot of I've seen a lot of job specs that put focus on your job is 80% development, 20% preparing for development. They don't always say planning, but yeah. Okay. So tasks, we have that. So now only tasks that are unassigned from sprints will show there. Now we have a sprint. I think we've done this story. So let's go back and actually look at the planning item for the requirements. Seeing sprints. As a developer, I should be able to select a sprint and see the current progress of the task within the sprint. To enable updating the task status in a simple manner, I should be able to drag and drop the task into the appropriate category to represent its progress. On the board screen, I should see, so we changed this requirement. Hey, Sully, 80%. I would say 55 to 60%. Yeah, probably. But again, that's something I want to try and cut down, right? I want to make sure that it's as streamlined as possible, so the time you are spending doing it is time that is focused and 10% development time, 50% bug fixing, the rest are bad. Change these things. Shouldn't be doing all the bug fixing. We should we should be able to develop software that we don't have as many bugs with. But do it faster. So on the board screen, I should be able to see a drop down of the sprints. When I select the drop down, I should see a board appear with the sprint name and 3 swim lanes. So we change this requirement, right? One of the things I'm going to have to decide on is, and this is definitely open for discussion. And by the way, what I might start doing is on some of these things, I might start creating threads in Discord to discuss some of these things, because I really would like opinions and feedback on some of these things and kind of leave them as open discussion. If a requirement is added, let's say we go to ready for planning, right? Our requirement's locked at that point. I don't think they're necessarily locked. I think they should be able to be adapted, because it would be dangerous to say fit to this requirement no matter what, or the work gets done and doesn't agree with what the requirement is, right? So the requirement here is actually, we change this. So maybe the right, and comments as well is something that I'm not sure. Comments is too broad. Requirement changed as the workflow was not sufficient, was not truly representative once the boards were in place. The backlog status is unneeded and can be inferred by the fact that a sprint is not attached to the task, or rather, the task is not attached to the task, not attached to a sprint. Ready for development is the default status right now. No, the boards were changed to represent that. So I do have that is actually saved. It's just there's some UI quirks there, but I do have we do have changes, right? Maybe we do. Maybe that piece is not working. That piece is not working. Ready for development. Right. So that changes. Yeah, there's the comment. So there is auditing, right? Requirements changing after tasks have been done is possible to see, assuming changes works. Yeah, changes would work. So there is an audit of changes that will happen. We actually have to talk about that as well. Well, future ideas. Changes should show, should offer because as much as I'd like to believe it, you know, we do live in a world that is driven by blame sometimes, but also just having that understanding of the workflow helps people understand it. So, should a requirement be allowed to be changed once the work has started? Should you lock these things down because, or should you prevent adding new once the work goes to in progress? So the idea of the planning item is one that is actually, it goes beyond sprints. The planning item is essentially the epic plus the story, right? It's the driving reason for the thing, and the tasks are the work that needs to be done to achieve the thing. So the requirements, you know, it could be considered small stories. But again, I don't think tasks necessarily align, and then we end up with messy stories and messy backlogs because we've got lots of tasks, lots of stories in there that either repeat the same thing or blur the lines. So that's what I'm trying to fix there. But yeah, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm seeing some of the cracks and some of the challenges appear. It's not gonna. I don't think there's a change calculated for that, which is strange. But anyway, seeing sprints. We've done this piece. As a developer, you should be able to drag and drop a card from a swim lane on the board to another swim lane to update your status. And, you know, we did, and again on that topic, we did actually add another requirement that backlog visibility, backlog should only show the items that are not associated with a sprint. If I associate a task with a sprint, it should disappear from the default, from the view. Got to be careful about putting those terms in there. Right. So again, if we were doing this for real, we'd say, okay, update store to filter by sprint set. So we'd say update the store on the client to filter records that have no sprint set. Update, again, we can use Markdown here. Update the sprint board, the backlog to use the new method. Update the GraphQL. And again, if you're going looking at what you need to do beforehand, then some of this is easier defined. GraphQL query to include associated sprint. So you can add that task, and that task would be over here now. Now, because it's not, he says with confidence. There you go. We're gonna start getting bitten more and more by the eventual consistency challenges. So we'll work on that. But now when you assign that to a sprint, we can go over here and next set of work. This is that one. Update store to filter by sprint set. And that's done. So it starts to take shape, right? That should show a task number there. Yeah. And now we can mark that one as completed, and that should disappear. And there we go. We're done with that one. By the way, this shows 2 updates because the toast notification's in the page and my panel's there. What I can do there is remove only show tasks that are not associated with a sprint in the backlog screen. Yep. Commit and push. This has still got the tools checking things. Again, I'm not getting stuck on fixing quirky suggestions and things like that, naming suggestions, etc. I can do a tidy up afterwards. This code is far from done, right? What's I going to do then? Oh, detail. So the planning item detail page, I have P messages in there, but because there's a P toast in the same page, when the message service fires, it puts it to everything. So I'm going to remove the message there. I don't know of any way of filtering it, but it's still good enough for what we're doing, right? So if we go here now and change to assign project there, right? The toast notification. I think that's a bit cleaner as well. It stops the moving of the page. Stops the moving of the page. Ads are going to start shortly. I really, really, really hope that StreamerBot and or Restream fix the connections. So I went to log in today. All the my Restream bot and my streamer.bot, they refuse to connect to Twitch or YouTube. So that's good. Okay. So on the sprint board, as a team lead, I should be able to complete a sprint. I think this is a bit more complicated than this. I think we need to talk about that a little bit more. When closing the sprint, if there are still days left in the sprint, I or the so we don't have the concept of started sprint either. So we don't have the concept of active versus inactive. It's okay to build sprints. It's okay to set sprints, but we don't even have the concept of started. So is closing sprints the right planning item? Is essentially right. This planning item was added because it's kind of a jog your memory. Now, nothing says we can't change everything about it, right? We can change the title, everything, but now that's the way I want to do it. Well, that's the way I'm going to do it. Otherwise, it's going to make even more of a mess of the data. But you might want to say, okay, well, no, this planning item we might have set it out as an actual thing to do because there might be more requirements. However, it's really not sufficient. Let's close it. So I was in some discussions yesterday and thinking more about this status of a planning item. I don't think this status is enough to reflect what the real like the status can be implied in some ways, but I think the status is a very small piece, and then there's more around it, such as, okay, the planning item was cancelled because we don't need to do this piece anymore because it's deemed unnecessary. Because I've started to add in some extra pieces around. Okay, well, we probably want to track the business values. And Dota and I have discussed that before as well. Like, we want to track the why, right? And then priority. How important is this to the customers or whatever? So I'm not doing these yet because I think they're concepts that need a bit more work. And also, I am actually, the more I think about this, the description is actually two things. There's a reason, like why is this planning item existing, and a goal. Like what does this planning item yield at the end? Like what is the actual goal? Because right now these descriptions start to look like the requirements. And I don't think that's the way it should be. So the reason, right? The business needs to understand the priority of something we are planning on doing. The goal should be able to set the priority of a planning item and have it, or should be able to set the priority of the planning item. The requirements lay out what actually achieves that goal. So I'm thinking that I might change that to be reason and goal or something similar. And again, discussion is welcome there. If you have any ideas, thoughts, opinions, there is Discord if you're new to the stream and you're interested in contributing more or discussing more. I'm not looking to idea farm. I'm not looking to steal people's ideas on how to do this and then say, hey, look, I made a product, I'm going to get rich. That's far from my goal. What I want to do is build something that helps. And the big challenge is most of us in the stream are developers, not PMs. So it's very hard to fully understand this piece. So I do have a few people who are product management that I do know, so I can probably reach out to them and see if they would kindly test this once it's in a good place and see what we can do. Which does remind me, I need to Agile. Yeah, we'll figure that pattern out afterwards. Okay, so closing sprints. Yeah, it's not active sprints. A sprint. Let's talk about rules here. Only one active sprint at a time. Can we do that? Nope. I have no concept of team. I have no concept of association with a sprint. So saying it only one active sprint at a time is a difficult challenge right this second. But essentially, we could build the concept. A sprint has the concept of active closed. Sorry, my brain, because I'm working on like a little screen because I've got like YouTube up on one side on like the 8-inch screen, so I can tell what happened there. Yeah, Xcoding is This guy's impressive. There's a ton of stuff he does on stream. Like the compiler stuff, and then goes to building the editor stuff, and yeah, the kernel. That's the one. Low level, and then yeah. When you do the shout out, sometimes I just realize just how many great places there are to go and hang out on Twitch from a variety of different uh, technologies, different personalities, and yeah, there's something for everyone for certain. Lots of smart people to learn from. Okay, sorry, I'm kind of thinking about my brain drifted there onto deleting a sprint. Like, what does it mean to remove a sprint? Like, so we don't want it sat out there. Um, sprint as a concept of active uh, or completed. An active sprint is actually, hold on. So this is hello Loki. You're not coming up. No, no, buddy. No. Okay, you're coming up. Okay. Hello, my friend. Hello. Hello, Mr. Pitter Patter. Do you want a bath? Would you like a bath? You need a bath. What are you trying? It's that time again. It's that time for Loki. You don't get to see him today because he wants to just start by lying down. Apparently. Um. Oh no, Loki. Oh, okay. Um. Let me think about this. A sprint. A sprint can be active, so you can assign work to it. It can be started to say it's in progress. It can be completed to say it's finished. And it can be deleted. If it's deleted, any associated tasks should have their sprint removed. We have a need for I wish I could show what is going on right this second, but Loki just curled up on my lap and put his head on my keyboard and went to sleep. So this is going to be fun. Um, with all the showers today. Emporium guy. Yeah. I Emporium guy is fun. You go and watch like he's learning Blazor primarily right now, but also learning all the frustrations and the struggles that come with it, and just general software development. Not just Blazor has things that are challenging, but everything has challenges, right? It's not a Blazor unique thing. But yeah, some days you catch him a little bit more chill, and some days he has some fun opinions. So very well worth hanging out there. Um, Hey, Boy Zero, how you doing? Is there a specific reference of sprint defined? Not sure what you mean. A specific reference? And I will type something the moment I get my hands free from this dog that's sat on my lap right this second. But he is comfortable, so. They're clearly defining a sprint. Good point. So let's talk about that. A sprint to me is a time period into which we can assign work. It has a start. Well, it exists. We can assign things to it, and it can be finished. There you go, Mr. Hanlon. It was a track, so we dropped it. So we kind of have our sprint boards. So yeah, a sprint can exist. It can be open for entry, I suppose, open for assignment. It can be started, which doesn't close it for assignment, as we all probably painfully know, right? You can assign work to a sprint even though it's active, or even though it's in progress. So I suppose open, in progress, completed, and completed. Um, yeah, there's a few different side effects of this piece. Resided drag and drop, making a complicated tree structure that only has specific drop zones broke my brain for a bit. Yeah. Primate G's drag and drop wasn't particularly difficult. I was impressed how generally easy it was. Um, it did remind me a bit of Java of jQuery's style, um, but it works. I've not implemented any sort of ordering concepts to this yet because it's just more right now like just get the task to move around the screen, right? But ultimately, yeah. So point zero, does that answer? Is that, do you feel that that's sufficient, or do you think that I need a little bit more definition around that? I thought that the status of the sprint was recursively defined by the status of the tickets in the board. No, no. Like a ticket on the board, but right now can't go outside of a status available on the board. Now, when we complete the sprint, anything that's ready for development or in progress has to go somewhere else, and I think that means that the sprint gets removed, or you attach them to a new sprint. Um, the concept of time on the sprint right now is loose, and I think it needs to become more firm. These Fluent UIs and Blazor was very low level, which is good for what I need. Yeah. This is really not ideal, bud. Um, yeah, so the sprint right now, so this board doesn't show anything that's assigned to a sprint. If I assign something to a sprint in here, it will disappear from here. Obviously, it goes there. We go here. We can see the cards, add drag and drop, in progress, completed. Right. We remove that. That clears the board out. Next set of work, load tasks into the board, in progress, complete. Ideal for you, yeah. So it's working. Um, so the sprint concept of time Should you be able to create a sprint when an existing one, when there is a sprint already for that time period? Right now, I think that would be very restrictive because I could potentially create Team A sprint and Team B sprint, right? So that's not a good rule. Ultimately, when I add the concept of team, the more I think about it, by the way, the more I think that this all gets associated to team, and you are a member of a team, and you can actually be members of multiple teams. So this will still offer the ability to switch between teams. Yeah. And by the way, I do have a thought that what I'm going to do is present this sort of Kanban view, a Kanban style view of work for everybody. So as a developer, when you go in, you don't necessarily need to see the sprint. You just need to see the things assigned to you. So if you're a member of two teams, you can see the work as it stands, like from that perspective, rather than from the team perspective. Loki, what's the matter? You can't get comfortable when my legs are squished like that. What's the matter, bud? You upset? Um, so yeah, I think sprint activity. I need to type. Do you want to be my keyboard holder? There you go. Okay, you be my keyboard holder. How's that sound? No, you don't want to hold my keyboard. Well, you've got to decide what you're going to do because you've got to be useful. I apologize for the fact that you probably can't see the dog. I just seem to be talking to my lap. I promise you, there is a dog laying on me right now that needs to move. Because I really want to type this. So a sprint. I will do this. A sprint can be open. Available to assign task to. Buddy, you've got to let me type. He doesn't like the noise of the typing. That's assign task to. Tasks to. Get out of the pouch. No, you're not stealing your tissue. No. Out. Sprint can be open. Okay. Now you pushed too far. Okay. There you go. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm just going to let them out. Right back.
Okay, let's see if we can finish this up now. So a sprint can be open, started. It's the current. Um, hmm, yeah, we'll get to that one. Um, Completed. Um, on a sprint. So is there a difference between open and started? Well, suppose there's an active sprint, right? So that is active. We probably right now want to assume we're working as a single team and we don't have the team concept, so we can only have one active. I've got to do that at the time, right? So there's only me right now. So as I'm working through this, it's very hard to deal with that team concept. I think early next week we'll probably start that process of building out a team. And again, I'm open to opinions on this. If you feel that this doesn't make sense or there's actually challenges, I really would love to know. If you feel we have multiple releases active at a time, they should relate to a sprint. There's a crap show doing it like that and having multiple opened. Yeah, but again, so I think in this world, what I've been doing is I've been kind of hardening the ideas as I start to make more progress on the concepts. I'm willing to go back and rip things out and change things around to address what I see as the things. So I have this general goal of what I want to do is be able to say, here's what's involved in this thing across, whatever pieces it is. Um, so this sprint activity planning item doesn't necessarily just live for one sprint. It's not just attached to one story. The goal would be to, in the end, as I create tasks, when I create a task, assign a group to it. So if QA has the task, or dev has a task, or DevOps has a task, this task is for them, right? And they're going to have different boards, but then you'll be able to click another tab down here, which will show you kind of the Kanban board of where everything sits. Is it ready for development or whatever stats we end up with? Is it in progress or has it been completed? So you can see overall all the things associated depending on whether they're QA, the dev, or the DevOps, or whatever other team you want to assign to them. So this individual planning item, you can see, and it's irrelevant of sprint or anything like that. Like, here's where everything lies. Um, and that's why these numbers are up here right this second, right? Their progress. But again, as you know, just because this is set and we've planned it out doesn't mean things can't change, things can't be added. QA can't be will be adding requirements and stuff as the thing goes on. But that's okay because it's telling the story of what happened to this thing and what testing we need, and the visibility into it is important. So what I want to do is kind of present these Kanban style boards at all phases. So the planning item will be able to see that. So you'll see all the tasks associated. The initiative will do the same thing for all the planning items. So it'll be able to say, hey, these planning items, here's where they lie, right? Um, so you can at a glance see all the things that roll up. And then from the developer's perspective, be able to see if you are cross team, here's all the tasks you have, not just here's the sprint you're in, where's your work, etc. So being able to visualize that quickly and easily. So in the case of the releases, if you're creating a sprint board for each release, now are they actually started? They're all running at the same time. So are they open? So in this world, they'd be open, so you can assign tasks to them. You can say, "Oh, in sprint one we want this, in sprint two we want this." But again, don't forget that the in this design, they're not stories, they're tasks. So you could actually say in this release, all these tasks are going to get done to make up this item. Um, and actually, initiative slash release could be at this phase rather than because it's release is not necessarily yeah. I was going to say release isn't necessarily a concept for the development team to necessarily worry about in that term, but it kind of is. What work is bundled up as part of a release is very much a development and DevOps concern. Yeah. So ultimately, this is going to show tasks, but then QA team might come in and see their tasks, but their tasks are all the QA tasks attached that they've attached to the same requirements. So you could see a requirement and see, here's all the like right now it's numbers, but I'm still trying to figure out the view. But here's all the tasks associated with this, whether they're QA or even a breakdown, like, 80% of the tasks on this are dev tasks, and then there's 20% QA tasks, or vice versa. So, anyway, the concept of a sprint being open, so you can put tasks in it. So, ultimately, the drop down to select the sprint only shows open or started sprints. When you complete, there's obviously an action there to say, okay, if anything's not been completed, should it move to another sprint or should it move um, there'll be like an assign to sprint option. And the date times for right now have no real bearing. So I should be able to complete the sprint. I should be able to start the sprint. A sprint as a development lead. I should be able. I gotta think through some of the personas for this stuff because again, I've worked in organizations where there's clearly defined roles and whoever, like the PMs start the sprint, but I've also seen where the developer that's about to take the first piece of work says, "I'll start the sprint," and has the rights to start the sprint. So I don't think there's a specific persona that actually is responsible for that. But let's assume for right now, as a development lead, I should be able to start the sprint on an open started sprint. So the thing is that drop down is going to offer open and started essentially because you want to see the sprints. But yeah, that should be when an open sprint is started, a button should appear in the top right of the screen. Again, this is in replacement for the fact that I don't have any graphical talent whatsoever to be able to go and draw these workflows out. When open sprint is started, a button should appear in the top right of the screen, offering to start the sprint. If the start date of the sprint is in the future, it should warn me. This is fun. Starting the sprint will set the start date to the current start date to the current date time. If the start date is in the past, actually, doesn't matter if the start date is in the past or the future. Does it really make a difference? Actually,
in the future, it doesn't matter because we're starting it now. I saw in the past the previous work cancelled sprint on merge ones. What are your thoughts on that? I think cancel sprint is definitely realistic. Sometimes we build something up and we like, oh no, this isn't right. We just throw it out. So in that world, when we mark it as deleted, that's another. I think from a planning perspective, we could roll that up into one planning item. But when you go to delete a sprint, I think it should offer a sprint to merge to move the items to, or remove the sprint entirely. A cancel sprint is there. One of the things I want to do in this project is and it's going to get harder and harder the more I do without tackling some of it, is more visibility into the events that happen in the system. So alerting people, oh, by the way, a sprint was cancelled, is good. But also, oh, a sprint was cancelled and all the work got moved to this other sprint is useful to know. So yeah, the notifications aspect on this system is going to be something I really, really do want to focus on. Yeah, merging and cancelling is definitely, you do need to do that. The start date, I'm just trying to figure out, does it matter if you start a sprint? If in the future starting a sprint will set the start date to the current date time. If the start date of the sprint is in the past. Now, the problem I have with this is I'm an echo chamber for the most part, which is why I ask for opinions so much. I get that, again, you might not be actively engaged with the stream. You might just be supporting me and putting the view on, which I really do appreciate. So I do apologize if this seems presumptuous, but the reason I'm asking for things is because I'm going to validate my own decisions. And this is the problem with this is the problem with a product manager and a developer being the same person. I'm not looking out for the needs of the product manager here, which I should be doing because I'm a developer. So what I don't want to do is try and assume too much before I validate those decisions. And that's what I'm trying to get to the point where the software does enough that you could call something out and we can change it. And similar to, I just replaced how the logic of the sprint board worked within 20 minutes, right? I changed out the status, I moved things around. Now the sprint board works totally different. And, or rather the backlog works totally different to how it did. And I think that's the key, is being willing to change these things. But in the same, these sorts of things are business style decisions that, what's useful here? What is worth knowing about? And I've got to make sure I ask the question. So in this particular case, it's, what do we want the behavior to be, right? From a tracking perspective, if the start date of the sprint is in the past, it should warn me that the original start date was X, but starting the sprint now will set. And that would be an audit action anyway. We'd know that that was changed. I should be able to start the sprint. Now, again, we get into is this testing? Is this whatever? So there's an implicit requirement there. And again, from a discussion perspective, when a QA goes to test that, the I don't think you are. Oh, ads again already, really? Has it been 40 minutes?
Wow, it's 9 a.m. Oh man. Um, if you are on YouTube, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, um, you are enjoying the content, I would sincerely appreciate the whole like and subscribe. I do a lot of this content, and um, I'll be finishing up shortly, so I will say goodbye and have a great day. If I don't see you around again on Twitch today, don't forget it is Wednesday, so we have one more live stream later on today. Which again, if you like .NET content and just general great a great place to hang out, a great place to talk about all sorts of topics, some different perspectives from this stream, some different approaches, and one line is also doing a lot of work stuff now, so you get to see actual real development code, product code being developed on stream, and it is a fantastic stream to be in. Yeah, sorry, my brain is now gone. I'm not sure about the specific question, but general observation. I work in DevOps. We don't work on sprints at all, while the dev teams do. Not sure how software would handle that. So right now I'm focused on sprints, but the idea of this thing is that the problem we have with things like Jira is we have this story, and some teams will task out stories, some teams don't like that, and the story is always, it can't be too technical. So we end up creating separate projects or separate things that split the work, and there's no clear links and jumps between the teams. What I want to do is say, okay, well, this is a planning item. This has tasks assigned to it, and ultimately, um, right now we're going to say provide the ability to have groups. So a group may be DevOps, QA, development, support, UI, UX, DBAs. And the idea is that when you go in here and you say, okay, well, there's a DevOps requirement for this particular piece. We need a server, or we need some infrastructure stuff, or we need some database configuration somewhere, or something, right? If there's a task assigned, the idea will be you go here, create the task, assign it to the DevOps group, and that will go into a board that the DevOps team will see. All right, it will come with the priority, it will come with all that. You then, DevOps teams won't use sprints, they use Kanban boards. So their board's always moving, right? So maybe it automatically assigns. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you have different boards for different challenges. There's all sorts of possibilities there. But ultimately, the goal would be that that task now is available for you to assign into the relevant board, and work on that task. It might have a dependency. There's all sorts of other things to challenge. But from the planning perspective, from the visibility perspective, the product team can come in and they'll be able to see a view that'll show all the tasks, regardless of whether they're in sprint or Kanban, and what status they're in. So they'll be able to say, oh, well, we've got a DevOps task pending on this thing. It needs to be done. Okay, let me know when that DevOps task is done. And again, the idea is the system will tell them this DevOps task has been started, this DevOps task has been completed. So now they can react to that as they need. And the goal will be that this will eventually show some sort of highlight, and the product team as a whole can keep an eye on the overall status, regardless of what group is assigned. So that's how I would handle it in this software, right? So you don't have to work in sprints, just have to have the concept of tasks assigned to you. And again, tasks can be related, or will be able to be related. But yeah, so hopefully that answers that. But the initial reason that I created this software was a concept I referred to as passing the ball. And the reason it is exactly that problem, where developers have something they're working on. Their story has a dependency upon a DevOps task, but there's no visibility into that. There's no, yes, you can link and you can say, yeah, here's a board, a Kanban board that the DevOps team have, and this has a dependency on that thing, etc. But it's not very obvious from a glance that there's all this work relates to this entire thing. And that's what I'm trying to provide, so that if that DevOps task is a dependency for the development task highlights that fact. And you can't just move it over if the idea will be you can't move it over if the DevOps task hasn't been completed. So it doesn't get rid of the entire communication, but it does increase the visibility. Okay. Restream what works for him. Okay. So it might not seem like I did very much today, overall, but we did get the drag and drop working of the boards. We got the sprints generally starting to look decent. The backlog now cuts out work that is already assigned to a sprint, so the backlog is just unassigned work that needs to be picked up and put somewhere. Priorities and stuff will come later. There's all sorts of other things there that we'll deal with. But yeah, the next task would be to get the sprints, and then shortly after that, I'm going to introduce the teams concept again, right? Because I think a team it starts to matter now, and that's going to be really hard to test because I'm going to have to log in different browsers, different perspectives. Hey, dog, come lie down. Um, okay. I don't like rating people who have followers only mode on by default, so I'm not going to start that. I shouldn't force you to. Uh, Win Zero, thank you very much for the sub. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go and raid. You're very welcome, One as always. Thank you very much. And if you like .NET content, please don't forget to check out One Lion streams Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Fridays are great days as well because they are community days normally. I won't say always. I'm just trying to see if there's anyone I can. I don't get to watch many streams after the stream, so it's like I can't check out other stuff. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go see Mr. Fullbots because Mr. Fullbots, his demo for his game Block Shop is in the Steam Next Fest. I was hooked on that for several hours the other day, so we're gonna go see Mr. Fullbots as a usual safe to go to streamer. I will be back tomorrow. We'll continue on with the sprint activity. We'll get the idea of starting and completing sprints done tomorrow, and because throwing out timelines is a really smart idea, and then we'll move on to teams and we'll start to explore those concepts. I do have some other stuff that I am kind of figuring out a little bit, but I think introducing teams starts to really highlight some of these differences. But yeah, things are starting to accelerate, so it's getting challenging. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much for joining me. I will be back tomorrow. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions, please feel free to drop in the Discord if you're comfortable with that. It does require phone number validation due to some spam issues. I apologize if that's a challenge, but yeah. Hey, Sai, how you doing? Naturally, that reminds me. I'll do it. If you haven't checked out Sai, he's developing Momentous, which is a task, a goal setting app, I suppose is the right way to put it, right? Built to like set goals and set tasks and make yourself accountable for them. And yeah, and he's
planning on releasing it in 8 days. I'm getting it to that point, so worth checking out. So anyway, I must go. Thank you very much for stopping by. Point Zero, thank you again for that sub. I do appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow. Have a great day. Take care all. I'll see you again soon. Bye.